Representative Dunbar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Secretary. And as you had alluded to, we do actually read your testimony, and I actually did. And in your testimony, you had brought up some of the cost savings ideas, and even in your words were, we continue to look for ways to operate efficiently and make the best use of our staff and resources. And we appreciate that. But I was wondering if you have any awareness of legislative initiative to change our budgeting process to a performance-based budgeting concept. Are you familiar with that?
I've seen a number of bills relating to that, yes.
And are you familiar? It essentially is trying to look at outcomes, outcome-based measurements and measuring effectiveness of your different programs. You had mentioned in your testimony about economic and social returns and that result from state funding and state dollars. Mm-hmm. How do you measure those returns? How are you measuring them presently?
Okay, as you know, our Governor Wolf came in very interested in outcomes and metrics, and so we at DCNR, like the other agencies, have a number of performance measures. I will point out, as an agency, it's our tradition to be very plugged into public interest in the outdoors, and many of you in this room share that. But interests shift over time, and so we keep in touch with the public. We have a lot of public processes. For instance, in the state recreation plan that was just adopted 2 years ago, we had 10,000 people supply input. So we use this public input to really adjust our metrics and our performance measures as part of a program-based budgeting process. We, as you can see in our program measures, we promote responsible stewardship of the Commonwealth's land. Those lands entrusted to us. That's a fairly staff-intensive effort. We have foresters on the ground, of course, managing ecosystem-based forestry. We see it an important role to maintain a steady supply of forest lands, working forest, as it were, for the timber industry.
Not to interrupt, and I appreciate what you're saying, but at any point in time, do you actually have like any type of return on investment measurements or something to that effect? It seems like a lot of times, and this is not meant to be critical, but whenever we talk to all the different secretaries and all the different programs, we hear all the wonderful things that we're doing.
Right.
We need hardcore measurements.
The ones we've done, we've commissioned with Penn State on the value of state parks to the state's economy. That one yielded that $1 billion to the state's economy, 13,500 jobs directly related to state parks. The National Park and Recreation Association did one on the economic value of the local parks in Pennsylvania. That was $1.5 billion, and I believe 14,000 jobs, something like that. And then the heritage areas, many of the heritage areas are here today. They just recently conducted a study on their economic value, and I believe I have that number as well. We make this budget proposes $2.25 million for the heritage areas to this year, and their study showed $2.3 billion in value. So we do this program by program. We look at the timber industry, the thing you mentioned first. That brings $19 billion to the state's economy. I believe that was a Penn State study. So we've done it program by program and weave that together, like a quilt.
And based on the results of the analysis, have you eliminated any programs? Do you rank them? Have you allocated more funds to improve certain programs?
One good example, and I'm hoping it'll come up today, is our increased focus on Chesapeake Bay and the waters of Pennsylvania statewide. We shifted 25% of our staff time of our so-called service foresters. These are the foresters that work with the private landowners. It's part of our mission people don't know too much about. We shifted 25% of their time to focus on helping landowners with streamside areas, riparian buffers. So we make shifts and changes like that. In the recession in 2008, we did something called complexing of parks. In the past, perhaps each state park had its own manager. Due to budget constraints, we complexed several park systems so that one park would be managed by several parks would be managed by one manager, covered by one ranger. So we've made those sorts of adjustments programmatically. I think, and I understand and hear the challenge on that kind of thinking. The governor in his cabinet meetings focuses on metrics a lot and really asks the agencies to report on their efficiencies and mechanisms through the Go Time initiative.
And we are almost out of time, so I did just want to say I appreciate that, and I think eventually what we have to get to is a system where we're analyzing all these things, but also tying them all directly back to the budget.
Okay.
And I think part of the issue right now we have seen with the governor's performance matrices and different things that they utilize is they're not tied directly to budget line items, which will help us in this process. So I do appreciate your answers. Thank you.
Thank you.